The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Kashif Kamran and I welcome you all to the day 4 of the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for exams in December 2020 being. Just before I start on that, all of you can hear me, right? Okay, thank you very much. And you can see the screen sharing, right? Okay, thank you very much. Now, today we are moving into the day 4 of this ongoing webinar for Advanced Audit and Assurance. And the focus for the day 4 today is to look at a very, very important topic, which is known as practice management. Now, this is an interesting topic, and in the recent past papers, it has become really, really important. Now, I will be emphasizing upon the knowledge of practice management today, as well as I will be giving you a better practice of this topic as well. So by the end of the session today, you have a very clear mindset on practice management. Now, just one very important announcement is that I'm not feeling well. I'm having some flu and cough. So do apologize me that if during the session I need to mute myself for a minute or so for any coughing or sneezing. So please do apologize me in advance for that, right? So let's get start on with the proceeding, and let's start on with the day 4. Okay, so the day 4 is an important day, which is about practice management, and you will be fascinating to know how important this topic has become in the recent past. And I'll be speaking a bit slow today in terms of my volume, just to protect my throat for the day 5 tomorrow. So let's start on with the day 4. Now, in the recent papers, particularly since September 18, the examiner focus on practice management has appeared back. So since September 18 exam, when the paper format was changed, the examiner focus on practice management has appeared back. This topic used to come in the past paper. This is not an unusual topic for the AAA paper, right? This is not a new topic for the AAA paper. Practice management is a syllabus area, and practice management used to come on a very regular basis if you look at the past papers, particularly if you look at the old past papers. But since then, for a certain number of years, it faded down, and then it has started to come back again. Now, how regularly has it come since September 18? I will just make you realize that. Look at the bullet number 2. Practice management is an important syllabus area, and the student should know its fundamentals from the exam perspective. So you should be very clear on the fundamentals of practice management, and you should be very well versed on that, so that you are better equipped for your exam paper. Adequate knowledge from practice management is a key to success. What is your examiner expectation? What your examiner expects from you in let's see what's the agenda, what I will be doing with you in terms of practice management today. Okay, now in terms of the practice management today, there is an article which you can see in the very first box. The article title is Acceptance Decision for Audit and Assurance Engagement. This is such an important article because this article covers in full the scope of practice management, from a AAA perspective. So as a student, if you want to know the scope of practice management, this article is so well written by the examiner that it clarifies you the scope of practice management from the AAA perspective. So if you read this article, you will have every knowledge you need to attempt this topic in a AAA paper, and you will not be needing to go into the textbook or read the chapter from the textbook. So this is a wonderful article. Secondly, during the course of my webinar today, I will be doing analysis of the examiner do's and don'ts. And then in my session today, I will be drilling 3 exam papers. One is December 18, question number 1D for 10 marks. One is September 18, question number 3A, 6 marks. And then one is June 18, question number 2A for 16 marks. Look at these 3 papers. They've come in very recent past. September 18, then after that, December 18, and then your home assignment. Look at your home assignment, March 20. So see how regularly has it come since September 18? It came in September 18, then it came in December 18, then it came in March 20. So it's coming on a very regular basis, right? Since September 18 exams. And then even in the June 18 exams, which is very near, very recent paper. So I will be drilling 3 of them. So you have the mindset, you have an idea about the scope of this topic, and you can easily handle this topic when you look at the home assignment. Okay, so this is the agenda in front of your screen. This agenda will help you to prepare yourself in an effective manner for this topic known as practice management. Now, what is the literal meaning of the word practice management and how you should be preparing yourself for practice management? Now, I just mentioned that there is a wonderful article, and this article, if you read this article in full, you will have a very good understanding of practice management, and that is one very good source of learning. Now, first of all, before I give you more knowledge, let's look at the examiner expectation from this topic, because that will help me to define the scope of my day 4 today. Now, the examiner expectation in terms of this topic, number 1, the examiner expects students to know the matters which the audit firm should consider in deciding whether to accept the new audit client. So as a student, you should know the matters which the audit firm should consider, in deciding. That means in taking a decision, in deciding whether to accept a new audit client. Should you accept the new audit client or not? So the examiner expects students that they should know the matters which the audit firm should consider in deciding whether to accept a new audit client or not. So you have to take a decision in the exam paper. You need to decide whether the audit firm should accept the new client or not. But what should you know as a student? As a student, you should know matters. Now, these matters are covered in the examiner article, right? When you read the examiner article, if I can just show you these in the examiner article, this is the examiner article, right, which I recommended you to read. See the title of the examiner article, Acceptance Decision. And that was exactly what the examiner was expecting from you, that as a student, you should know the matters which an audit firm should consider in deciding whether to accept a new audit client. Now, this article covers the 2 decisions which are part of your paper. One decision is for the audit. Number 1. And one decision is for the assurance engagement 2. So in an exam paper, you might get an acceptance decision for a new client, or you might get an acceptance decision for an assurance engagement. Now, what is the difference between the two? I will just be clarifying that. But if you read this full article, you will know the acceptance decision number 1 and you will know the acceptance decision number 2. Now, when you scroll down and you look at the page number 2 of the article, see the page number 2 of the article. It says accepting a new audit client, page number 2. So on the page number 2 of the article, you have accepting a new audit client. And that was exactly what the examiner was expecting from you. If you look at my PowerPoint presentation, it was saying matters which the audit firm should consider in deciding whether to accept a new audit client. So will you get these matters from the page number 2 of the article, everyone? Page 2 and page 3 of the article. So if you read this article, can you develop a list of matters, everyone? If you read the page number 2 and if you read the page number 3 of the article, will you be able to develop a list of the matters which the audit firm should consider? Right? So please carefully read the page number 2 and please carefully read the page number 3. So you know the matters which the audit firm should consider in deciding whether to accept a new audit client, right? So that is on the page number 2 and that is on the page number 3. Okay, look at the number 2 exercise. The number 2 expectation of the examiner from you is further, the examiner expects the student to know the matters, which the audit firm should consider in deciding, to accept additional non-audit services from an existing client. Look at the last line. Matters which the audit firm should consider in deciding whether to accept non-audit services from an existing client. Can you feel the difference between number 1 and number 2? In the number 1, the examiner is expecting you that you should know the matters in deciding a new client. I hope you can see the word new. And in the second, the examiner expects that you know the matters in deciding to accept additional services from an existing client. So can you feel the difference between accepting a new client and accepting additional services from an existing client? Okay, can you find the difference between the bullet number 1 and the bullet number 2? Right? So the examiner article covers both the parameter. The examiner article covers the matters in accepting a new audit client, and the examiner article covers the matters in accepting additional services from an existing client. Now, if you see the examiner article again, and you go from the page number 2 to page number 3 and to page number 4. On the page number 4, see this, accepting non-audit assignments. These are accepting non-audit assignments from an existing client, from an existing client. So at the bottom of the page number 3, you will see the answer. So if you want to know the matters and if you want to prepare the matters from an examination perspective, that what matters will the audit firm consider in accepting an additional service from your existing client, then the bottom of the page number 3 of the article and the page number 4 of the article will help you. So that means, can we meet the examiner expectations? Do we know the source of meeting the examiner expectation for day 4? Now on the day 4, what is the examiner expecting from you, right? The first thing the examiner is expecting from you is matters to consider in accepting a new audit client. And the second thing the examiner is expecting from you is matters to consider in accepting additional non-audit services from an existing client. Is that so? Is that so? Everyone, matters to consider in accepting additional services, from an existing client, and matters to consider in accepting a new client. So has the examiner covered both the matters in the article? Yes. In the article, you will read the page 2 and page 3 for the answer to this. And then in the article, you will read the page. In the article, you will read the page 3 bottom, and the page 4 in full. And you will find the answer to the word matters. Right now, I'm giving you the checklist, right, of the matters to consider in accepting a new audit client and matters to consider in accepting additional services from an existing client. But do you all agree that you have an examiner article which will provide you the guidance on matters? So is the examiner leaving you without any support here? Or has the examiner provided you an excellent support on the matters to consider accepting a new client and matters to consider accepting additional services from an existing client? This is practice management, right? So either you are accepting a new client and how, or either you are accepting additional services from an existing client and how. So should you know the parameters of a new client and should you know a parameter of an existing client, right? So let's quickly go through that and then start with an exam perspective. Now the very first thing is the matters to consider when accepting a new audit client. Now, when you read the article, I'm just giving you a summary. Please do read the article rather than you have a Q&A session with me. When you read the article, you will get a checklist of the matters to consider when accepting a new client. Number one matter, because it's a new client, just keep the focus on the new client, right? And you don't know about the new client. Do you? Do you not? Do you know about the new client? Do you have knowledge about the new client? Do you know about whether the new client is a good client or a bad client? So you do you have knowledge? No. So the very first thing you have to do, the very first matter you have to consider is the client screening. You have to carry out a client screening. You want to carry out know your client procedures. Know your client procedures, or you need to have knowledge about the new client. Knowledge about the new client. Is that important matter? So you need to gather knowledge about your new client. You need to do the screening of the new client in order to identify whether it is a good client or a bad client, whether the client is involved in money laundering, tax evasion, something like that. Is it a bad client? Is it a good client? Is there something bad about the client given in the case study? So when you are doing the client screening, is there something bad? Is there something bad about client in the case study? In the case study. Bracket close. Okay, now once you've done the client screening of your new client, you will also communicate with the previous auditor because it's a new client. You will communicate with the previous auditor if there was one. If there was one and the case says, the previous auditor has resigned. If the case says the previous auditor has resigned or the case says the previous auditor has been removed and you are in the process of being appointing against the previous auditor. So will you communicate with the previous auditor? Will previous auditor be a source of knowledge for you? Will the previous auditor give you knowledge of the business, knowledge about the problems, knowledge about the issues, right? So do you believe communicating with the previous auditor will also help you with the client screening process? Agree, disagree? Okay, that's good. Agree. Okay, now do have a common sense, which at times is absent in the exam paper. Suppose, I'm writing it in the red, suppose the exam paper says the company, which is the new client of yours, the company was previously exempt from audit. The company was previously exempt from audit. And you mistakenly write in the exam paper that when we are accepting a new client, we should communicate with the previous auditor. Will that be a right point or a wrong point? The examiner is saying the company was previously exempt from audit. So will they have a previous auditor? Will they have a previous auditor? No. So, and you mistakenly write the point number 2 because you had a rote learning. So will rote learning be helpful in the exam paper? No, you have to look at the case study. So you should communicate with the previous auditor only when the previous auditor was present. You cannot communicate with the previous auditor when the company was previously exempt from audit. So please carefully read the case study. More matters when you read the examiner article. Now, when you read the examiner article, the other matters you will come across is that when you are accepting a new audit client, you will also assure that the preconditions of audit are present. When you are accepting a new client, assure as an audit firm that the preconditions of audit are present. The preconditions of audit are present. What are preconditions of audit? What are preconditions of audit? Now, when you go back to the article and you read the article for accepting a new client, right? Look at this article. Can you see the heading on the page number 2, accepting a new client, everyone? Right? And when you go down accepting a new client, page number 2, and you come on the page number 3, can you see on the page number 3, the examiner has wrote a heading precondition of audit. So please read it so that you know what are preconditions of audit. But when you are accepting a new audit client, you need to assure that the preconditions for audit are present. Now, please read the page number 3 carefully so that you know the preconditions. Now, you have done the F8 paper, right? So you know the preconditions. What are preconditions? The preconditions of audit are the management responsibilities, as simple as that. So at the time of accepting a new audit client, you need to ensure that the preconditions of audit are present. Preconditions of audit are the management responsibility, and the auditor and the audit firm needs to assure that management of the new audit client fully accepts or fully acknowledges their responsibilities. So even before you accept the audit, you will assure that the management of the new client fully accepts their responsibility. Then only you will accept the new audit client. If the management fails to accept their responsibilities, you cannot accept a new audit client. So, do you know the management responsibilities, everyone? Please cover the management responsibilities from the examiner article. Cover the list of cover the list of management responsibilities. You have covered them in the F8 paper as well, right? But cover the list of management responsibilities, in total 3, from the examiner article, from the page 3 of examiner article. Is that clear? But I hope as a student of F8 coming to P7, you are fully aware of the list of management responsibilities, right? So you do the client screening, you communicate with the previous auditor, you assure that the preconditions of the audit are present, and for that you can read the page number 3 of the examiner article. Okay, move on. You also assure when you are accepting a new audit client, are there any ethical issues? Are there any ethical issues which we covered yesterday? Are there any ethical issues given in the case study? Are there any problems like familiarity threat, like advocacy threat, like intimidation threat? Now you have to read the case, right, for ethical issues. So when you are accepting a new audit client, are there any ethical issues given in the case study pertaining to the new client? And you need to identify the ethical issues. And when you identify the ethical issues, you also need to identify the safeguards, the relevant safeguards. So matter. When you are accepting a new client, also assure there are no ethical matters. And also assure that if there is an ethical matter, you have proper safeguards in place. So you have to read the case study very carefully given by the examiner to identify is there any ethical issue. And I given you guidance on how to write an ethical issue in my day 3 yesterday. Then also you have to consider your competence. You have to consider your competence as the audit firm, as an audit firm. So as an audit firm, do you have competence? Competence versus the nature of the new audit client. Nature of the new audit client. Is that important? As an audit firm, you need to consider your competence as an audit firm versus the nature of the new audit client. Example, banking. Example, insurance. Example, pharmaceutical. Example, technological. Example, technological, etc. So will you look at the nature of the client coming to you, and will you consider your competence as an audit firm versus the nature of the client? That as an audit firm, do you have specialization? So will the audit firm ask a question to themselves whether the audit firm has specialization in the nature of client, in the nature of client, or in the nature of the industry? Right? So whether the audit firm have industry know-how, or whether the audit firm have industry specialization, or have they ever done audit of this industry before? If they have done audit of this industry before, then that's wonderful. So will the audit firm be considering the competence versus the new client, competence versus the industry of the new client, and asking themselves whether they are competent in that industry or not? Is the point number 6 clear to everyone? And again, please do read the Examiner article. You also need to look at the deadlines when a new client comes to you. Deadlines. By when the new client want the audit to finish, and is the deadline realistic? Is the deadline realistic? Because if the deadline is realistic, then only you will accept the client, right? But if the deadline is unrealistic, you will not. Because for an unrealistic deadline, the quality of the audit will compromise. Because if the deadline is unrealistic, you will perform audit in a rush. And when you perform audit in a rush, it will compromise the quality. So should you consider the deadlines given by the new client to consider whether they are realistic or not when you are accepting a new audit client? Right? So can you look at the list of matters coming in front of your screen when you're accepting a new client? And this is the list given in the Examiner article. And the last thing you will consider when you are accepting a new audit client is the fees and the basis of fees. When you're accepting a new audit client and you believe it is a good client, how much fees to charge? Is the new client commercially attractive? Is the new client commercially viable? Give me an answer. If you go for a job interview, will you be concerned about how much salary will you be getting from your new employer? Look at the point number 8 carefully. So, is the audit firm getting a new job? Is the audit firm getting a new client? And as an audit firm, will the audit firm be interested to know how much income will I be getting from this new client? Greater income or minor income? So when we go for a job, or when you go for a job and you are giving an interview, do you consider that when you go for a job interview, at the back of the mind, you have a question: how much salary will this employer be paying me? If the employer pays me a good salary, then only I will accept the job. Otherwise, I'll switch and go to another employer, right? So you need to consider the fees when you're accepting a new audit client, right? How much fees the new client will be giving you. So please read the Examiner article. I made a summary in front of you. Will this summary help you to read the page number 3 and 4 of the Examiner article? Will you reconcile it when you're reading the article 1 to 8? So if a question comes in the exam paper, matters to consider when accepting a new audit client, this is the checklist, right? But you need to carefully apply this checklist, carefully apply this to case study. Carefully apply this to a case study, adapt the list above, adapt the list above to the case given by the examiner. You cannot just have a rote learn of the list, right? Adapt the list above to the case given by the examiner. And we will be doing the practice shortly on that. So this is a very important note for the student, right? A student note. Okay, should we move to the second element, matters to consider when accepting additional services from an existing client? Okay, let's start on matters to consider when accepting additional services from an existing client. Is it easier because we know the client, existing client? So the checklist will become small, right? So you have to read the page number 4, page 3 bottom, page 3 bottom onwards of the examiner article, right? For finding the answer. So now this time you are accepting additional services from your existing client. Uh, is this a reality that your existing audit client offers you more services in future? Can your existing client offer you more services in future? Can they ask you to can they ask for more services? Yes, they can. So if your existing client asks for additional services from you, what you need to consider? You need to consider first, number one, your competence. Competence versus the nature of additional service. Nature of additional service. Do you know the existing client? Do you know the industry of the existing client? Yes. So what competence are you looking for? Are you looking for the competence above? No, you're looking for the competence versus the nature of the additional service. Which service the client wants from you? Do they want a forensic service from you? Do they want a due diligence service from you? Do they want a review of a prospective financial information from you? Do they want a review of the internal control service from you? Do they want a payroll service from you? Do they want a tech service from you? So competence versus the nature of additional service, and do the audit firm has competence in that service or not? So the audit firm needs to ask a question to themselves whether they have competence in that particular service or not, to say yes or no. So that is the first point. With the competence, you look at the deadline. Deadline, is it realistic? What is the deadline of the additional service? Is it a realistic deadline? Just like the point above, deadline, is it realistic? Versus the nature of the service. Because if the service is very complex, like forensic service or like a due diligence service, and the deadline is very strict, and you have very few days, to complete it, will it compromise the quality? If the deadline is unrealistic, will it compromise the quality of the service performed? So will you be taking on an additional service if the deadlines are unrealistic? Okay, now you're offering additional services, right? To whom? Quick answers. You're offering additional services to whom? A new client or an existing client? To an existing client. So you need to consider the ethical issues given in case. Obviously, when you're offering additional services to your existing client, it will give rise to many ethical problems, and you have to read the ethical issues given in the case by the examiner, given in the case study. There will be, because it's your existing client and you're offering more services to your existing client. Might be a self-review threat, might be a self-interest threat. So you need to be very careful because you're offering more services to your existing client. And when you speak of the ethical issues, you speak of the safeguards. And finally, you look at your fees and basis of the new service. How much fees will you charge for the new service? Just like the new client. How much income will you be getting from this new service? Right? So only 5. So do you believe the checklist for existing client has gone down because we have knowledge of the business, we know the client, we know the preconditions are present? So do you see the checklist going from 8 to 5 when you are accepting additional services from existing client? Right? So please revise this checklist. Please revise this checklist, and please ensure you read the examiner article. So if you read the examiner article and you revise the checklist given in front of your screen, will you be prepared to answer the question of the examiner? Will you be prepared to answer the question of the examiner in front of your screen? Just read just read what's coming in front of your screen. Bullet number 1 and bullet number 2, and tell me, are you prepared to answer the bullet number 1 and 2 in exam paper? Right? So are you prepared on the bullet number 1? Do everyone knows the matters for a new audit client? Can you answer the matters in exam paper? Okay. And in the bullet number 2, do you know the matters for existing client? Okay, that's wonderful, right? Okay, now that means we are going towards the start of the case studies. Okay, now which case studies we need to do? We have December 18, we have September 18, and we have June 18, right? So we have 3 papers: September, December, June. Okay, let's start the practice and the marking scheme, which is very, very important, right? Okay, let's start with the practice and the marking scheme. Practice of the past papers. Now, how many papers are we attempting? Number 1, we are attempting the June 18 paper. We are attempting the September 18 paper, and we are attempting the December 18 paper. Now, in the September 18 paper, just to give you an idea, in the June 18 paper, the question was about accepting a new client, accepting a new audit client, right? In the September 18 paper, it was about accepting additional services from an existing client. And then again in the December 18 paper, it was about accepting a new audit client, accepting a new audit client. And you have to do the March 20 yourself. And when you read the March 20 paper, you will then decide, is it accepting a new audit client or is it accepting a service from an existing client? But I am going over 3 questions. One is on accepting service from an existing client, and 2 are accepting a new audit client. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, let's start the journey. Okay, now how to go about the marking schemes. Now, if the question asks for matters to consider, if the question asks for matters to consider, number 1, in accepting a new audit client, that's number 1. And if the question asks for matters to consider in accepting additional services, from an existing client, the marking scheme will vary. The most updated marking scheme, if you do the old papers, you will get distracted with the marking scheme. The most latest marking scheme is that if the examiner asks for matters in accepting a new client, then every matter, each matter will be worth 2 marks. Each matter is worth 2 marks. So if the examiner has given you 8 marks, you will divide 8 marks by 2 and you will write 4 matters. But if the question is about accepting services from an existing client, then when you write each matter is worth 1 mark. So if the question is for 8 marks, you will divide it by 1 and you will write 8 matters from the case study. Is that clear, marking scheme? So when you are accepting a new audit client, how many marks will you get per matter? 2. No, when you're accepting a new client, how many marks will you get per matter? 2. Okay, and when you're accepting an additional service from an existing client, how many marks will you get per matter? 1. So is that marking scheme clear? So in the June 18 paper, which marking scheme will be applied in the June 18 paper? 2 or 1? 2. Okay. And in the September 18 paper, will we apply the marking scheme of 2 or 1? Right. Saida Mehek, non-audit services is the additional services, right? The additional services are known as the non-audit services, right? Non-audit services, or the additional services are also known as assurance engagements. So they can be different forms, right, of the same terminology. Okay. Should we start attempting questions one by one? And we spend time on each one of them because I need to do the brainstormings of each question. And then once I give you a brainstorming, you can formulate the answer. Okay, let's start one by one. Now, the very first question we are going through, I'm starting first from December 18 paper, right? December 18, question number 1, which is accepting a new audit client. Accepting a new audit client. Now, this is something very interesting. If you look at the September 18 paper, sorry, if you look at the December 18 paper, accepting a new audit client has come in the question number 1, right? And we know the question number 1 is a big 50 marks question, right? So being a big 50 marks question, examiner has put accepting a new audit client in one of the part of the December 18 question number 1. Let's see what was exactly the question. Okay, let's go to December 18 paper. Okay, this is the December 18 paper. Can all of you see the December 18 paper in front of your screen? Okay, that's great. Move down. Okay, now can you all see the question number 1? Okay, that's great. And question number 1, go to the next page. Can you see the requirements A, B, C, D? A, B, C, D, all of you? Okay, just read the requirement number D here yourself before I explain. I'm giving you 1 minute. Just read the requirement number D, which I highlighted in orange. Right, so it's the examiner asking us to accept an engagement from Emu Gyms Company with an audit or limited assurance review. So Emu Gyms Company is a new audit client for us. When you read the case, you will realize it's a new audit client, and they want you to offer them either the audit services or the limited assurance review. So any of those services you can offer them. Either you offer them an audit service or a limited assurance review because it's a small company. Okay, how many marks we have? 8. We are accepting a new client. So how many marks will we get per matter? 2. Okay, I'm just putting this requirement here in front of you, and let's start reading the case study and let's see exactly what we need to do. Okay, is the examiner telling us that you have to go to the exhibit 4 for the answer? Is the examiner saying in exhibit 4? So will we find the answer of the matters in exhibit 4 or elsewhere? We'll find the answer of the matters in exhibit 4, right? So in exhibit 4, we have some information relating to Emu Gyms Company. So where we have the information about Emu Gyms Company? In exhibit 4. So should we read that information about Emu Gyms to decide what matters to consider in accepting this, in accepting the audit, the new audit client Emu Gyms, right? So what you should do, you should read exhibit 4, and from the information given, identify the matters to be considered in deciding to accept Emu Gyms or not, in deciding to accept Emu Gyms Company or not. Right? And the marks are 8. So 8 marks divided by 2 is equal to 4 matters. But the 4 matters have to be connected to the case, right? Connected to the case. So you'll connect them to the case, not writing journal points. Okay, so exhibit 4 becomes important, right? So we'll go directly to the exhibit number 4. Now, just before I tell you to read the exhibit number 4, because it's a question number 1, right, which is a very long case study. And when you read the question number 1 normally in the exam paper, you first read the introduction, right? So whenever you read the question number 1 in exam, right, you normally start the question number 1 with introduction. Okay, can you just do one thing? Can you just read this introduction for me in like 3 minutes and see whether you get some information about emu gyms in the introduction page? I'm giving you 3 minutes. And once you are read, do tell me. Read the 3 paragraphs in orange and see whether you find any information about emu gyms company. Your time starts now, right? Okay, please be very critical of the para number 3, because the para number 3 is telling us about the conversation between the partner Stella and the managing director of emu gyms, Mick. That conversation is very important between the partner and Mick. So do you believe that as an audit firm, Huntsman and Company, you are already providing emu gyms the payroll services? Are you already providing them the payroll services? But are you their auditor? Are you doing audit of them? No, you are just providing them a payroll service. So will it be the first year that you will be providing them the audit services? Right? So will it be a new audit client for you? Will it be a new audit client for you? Yes, it's a new audit client for you. But do you have prior knowledge? Do you have prior knowledge of emu gyms? You have. But tell me my question answer. Is it a new client for you? It is a new client for you, right? Is it the first time you will be doing their audit? Yes, this is the first time you will be doing their audit, right? So is it a new audit client? Yes, it's a new audit client. But do you have a prior knowledge? Do you have a prior knowledge? So that prior knowledge will help you. Let's see. Now, when we go to the exhibit number 4, let's see how the exhibit number 4 provides us information. Okay, let's go down to the exhibit number 4. I'm taking you to the exhibit number 4. And in the exhibit number 4, okay, right here, the exhibit number 4, right? Can you see the exhibit 4 in front of your screen now? A telephonic conversation between Stella and a telephonic conversation between Mick, right? Okay, now let's read every information given so that we can identify the problems. Matters to consider when accepting whether to provide the audit or limited review to emu gyms. Okay, now do me one favor. Can you just read from here to here? Just 1 minute. Can you just read from here to here in like 4 minutes and carefully identify the methods to consider? Okay, your time starts now. Start reading. The orange, all in orange. And after 4 minutes, please tell me you are read with it. And please identify the methods when you're reading. Methods to consider. Have all of you read it, or someone is still reading it? Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, let's start analyzing it. Just waiting for 1 more minute. Some students are still reading it. We still have a minute, so I'm just waiting for that. So the other students can also complete it. Just 1 minute more, right? Okay, now has everyone done it? Should we go down with it? Okay, the first paragraph here, if you just go one by one, this first paragraph in orange is just an introductory paragraph. And this first paragraph is just telling about the conversation between Stella and Mick. And Mick telephoned Stella, and Mick wants the audit firm, or Mick wants Stella to perform the audit or a limited review of the financial statement. This would be the first time that the financial statements will be subjected to audit or limited review. Is that an important information? That this will be the first time that the financial statements of Emu Gyms will be subjected to audit or limited review. Has there been any audit in the prior years? Have there been any limited reviews in the prior year? So, do you believe this is the very first matter you need to consider here? If I just make a checklist, meta, number one, again, this is brainstorming, right? This is not the way of writing answer, but this is just a brainstorming. Number one, meta, company was previously exempt. The company was previously exempt from audit or a limited review. Is that right? So the company was previously exempt, right, from the audit and the limited review. So is this the first time their financial statements will be subjected to the audit or a limited review? Any one of them? Right? So the company was previously exempt from audit and a limited review. So will Stella consider this point as important? When Stella is evaluating the matters to consider, will Stella consider this point as important, or will the manager consider this point as important? It will, because the company was previously exempt from audit or limited review. So what about the financial statements? Do you believe there is a risk in the financial statements because they have never been audited? They have never been reviewed. So will there be some risk? Will there be a high risk in the financial statements because they've never been audited? Can there be misstatements in the financial statements because they've never been checked, they've never been reviewed? So do you expect a lot of misstatements in the first year audit because the financial statements have never been checked before? And what about the financial statements and the auditor responsibility? You know, there is an auditor responsibility when you are conducting an audit. When the company was previously exempt, the auditor has a responsibility to verify the opening balances. I hope you all agree with that if you have studied the AAA paper in full. Auditor needs to verify the opening balances, right? When the company was previously exempt from audit. I hope you know this knowledge. So is it not an important point for a manager that the company was previously exempt from audit? Will the auditor, will the partner, will the manager consider something for the first point? So do you all believe the financial statements might contain more misstatements because they've never been reviewed in the past, they've never been audited in the past? There might be some window dressings in the financial statement. And do you believe there is an additional responsibility for the auditor to verify the opening balances? So is it an important matter? The company was previously exempt, right? Okay, let's move to the next point. Point number two, come back to the case study. Please, you need to formulate the answer into a paragraph form. I'll be guiding you how to do it. Come to the next paragraph, business background. Look at the first paragraph of business background. Now, the first paragraph of business background tells us the company was founded by Mick, and since that time, our firm has provided a payroll service for the company staff, which now numbers 35 working in the company Force Gym, all located in the suburban areas. Okay, are we providing the payroll services to this company since long, right? So will it become our audit client in future now? When we were just providing them the payroll service, there was no ethical problem, right? But now we are providing them the payroll service and possibly becoming the auditor. Do you believe this gives rise to a self-review threat? Point number two, providing payroll services versus versus potential audit client. Is it our potential audit client for future? So if you're providing payroll services to Emu Gyms, and Emu Gyms seems likely to be our potential audit client in future, do you believe this gives rise to a self-review threat? Because payroll is a component of a financial statement. Payroll is a component of a financial statement. Payroll is a component of a financial statement, which will later be audited by the audit firm, which will later be audited by the audit firm, and the audit firm will be reluctant, and the audit firm will be reluctant to review the payroll balance. Is that right? We even found a self-review threat yesterday, right? In the day 3. So a self-review threat, right? Payroll is a component of a financial statement, which will later be audited by the audit firm, and the audit firm will be reluctant to review the payroll balance. So have I justified why it is a self-review threat? Or did I just wrote it is a self-review threat? So providing the payroll services and to a potential audit client, do you believe it gives rise to a self-review threat? So self-review threat is one ethical matter. The second ethical matter is the self-interest threat. Is there a prospect of generating more income from Emu Gyms? Are we already getting income for payroll services? Do you believe there is a prospect of generating more income from Emu Gyms? We are getting the income from the payroll, and in future we will be getting the income from audit. So do you believe that increases the income we will be generating from the audit from the client? It's not dependency, basically. We are not sure about dependency so far. The question is not telling us about that. But does it means we are generating more income? And do you believe this generating more income is a self-interest? We don't know how much percentage of the income you are generating, right? So we cannot comment on that. But do you all believe we are generating income? Right? So self-interest, right? Generating more income from Emu Gyms, payroll plus audit. Okay, now you move down and you come to the next point. Again to the case study. Okay, we also provided Mick with advice on the personal tax position and financial planning for his retirement. Now, code of conduct is very clear. The code of conduct says you can provide services for the personal tax computation. Is it the company's tax position, or is it the personal tax position of the owner? So this is the personal tax position of the owner, right? Fine. Will it go to the financial statements of the company? Will it be a component of the financial statement of the company? The personal tax computation? No. So does it give rise to any self-review threat? No. So the code of conduct says it is permissible, right? You have no problems providing personal tax positions or financial planning to the owner, because this is a service you are providing to an individual, right? This is not a service you are providing to the Emu Gyms company. So there is no problems, right, with providing advice on the personal tax position. The only problem was the payroll service, right? Okay, moving on. Mick runs the company with his son Steve, who is qualified personal trainer, and the daughter, who is a marketing director. The company employs one accountant who prepares the management and financial accounts and deal with the customer membership. I think this one accountant have a lot of pressure working under the owner Mick, his son Steve, and his daughter as well. Do you believe this accountant will be under a lot of intimidation threat, under a lot of pressure to window dress a financial statement as the owner wants it to be? So do you believe there will be a lot of pressure? Does that increase the risk of material misstatement in the financial statement? One accountant working under Mick, his son and a daughter, right? So if you want to write this point, you can, that there is just one accountant, and this one accountant will be under a lot of pressure, will be under a lot of pressure. So why is this point important to us? Will be under a lot of pressure means financial statements could possibly contain more misstatements. So why this point is important to the auditor if one accountant is under a lot of pressure? This point is important to the audit firm because the financial statements could possibly contain more misstatements. So should you be alert as an auditor when you come to the audit of Gyms that there is just one accountant who is under a lot of pressure? So will you be skeptical when you come to the audit? Right? So one accountant. Okay, you come to the next para then. Okay, the next para. The company has grown quite rapidly, and the revenue was 8 million, and the total assets is 5.5 million. Okay, the comparative figures were revenue was 6.5 million, and the total assets was 4.8 million. So has the company grown rapidly over the last few years? Grown rapidly? And do you believe a rapid growth can be an indicator of a creative accounting? How much sales have increased? How much sales have increased over the last year? Can anyone find the percentage? How much sales have increased from last year? Is the examiner giving us the comparative number? Is the examiner giving us a comparative number for something or for nothing? How much sales have increased from last year? Can we calculate that for the examiner? Yes. The sales have increased from the last year by how much? By 23%? What is the right answer? Someone is saying 35, someone is saying 23. What's the right answer for the sales increasing? 23, right? Okay, I'm considering 23 as the right answer. How much sales have increased from the last year? By 23%, right? So do you believe um, a rapid growth could be a trigger for creative accounting? Could be a trigger for creative accounting, and the auditor should be alert during audit. The auditor should be alert during audit for any misstatements in revenue. Do you believe revenue is a fraud risk factor? Do you believe revenue has the highest risk of fraud? Everyone? ISA 240. ISA 240 says revenue is a fraud risk factor. How much revenue has increased over the last year? 23. So can that be used as a creative accounting tool? Can you overstate your revenue to boost your profit? So auditor should be alert during audit, right, for any misstatements in revenue. So grown rapidly should be looked for in a skeptical manner, right? If you have any questions during a webinar which you believe is not being answered, because I'm busy with attempting the question and not focusing on your questions at the moment, so please do drop them on the WhatsApp, or I can answer them during the break. Okay, is everyone clear so far, so forth? Are you getting the perspective how to look at the case study? So are we looking at the case and identifying the matters, or are we just going with the rote learn list? Are we just going with the rote learn list we saw at the beginning of the class? Client screening, correspondence with the previous auditor. Are we going with that list? Or are we just looking at the case? And is the case helping us? Is the case helping us in identifying the matters so far, so forth? I think we've already taken 8 marks, more than 8 marks, right? Okay, let's go down to the last paragraph. Again to the case study. Can you just read this paragraph in 2 minutes and tell me you've read it? Just read this paragraph in orange in front of the screen. And after 3 minutes, I'll start discussing. See how many additional problems can you identify from this paragraph? Your time starts now, right? Okay, have you read the first paragraph? This one? This first paragraph here in orange? So, do you believe in this paragraph, uh, the bank will be very much interested in the audited financial statements? Will the bank take an interest in the audited financial statements audited by Huntsman and Company? So do you believe there is a exposure to liability? Will the bank be relying on the audited financial statement? Will the bank be using the audited financial statement audited by the Huntsman Company? Right? So is there an additional responsibility here? Uh, Reliance by bank. Reliance by bank. Will the bank be relying on the audited financial statement? Reliance by bank on the audited financial statement? Audited financial statement. So does that increase the liability? Does that increase the liability for the audit firm? Because the bank will also be relying on the audit. Bank will also be relying on the financial statements. So that is liability for the audit firm, and the audit firm needs to uh, perform audit with extra care. The audit firm needs to perform audit with extra care, right? Because there can be some negligence, right? Negligence later to avoid any negligence, right? So do you believe the audit firm should avoid any negligence later and they should perform audit with due care? Right? You should know the auditor liability, right? The auditor is not just liable to the shareholder, the auditor is also liable to the known third parties, right? So is it a known third party, the bank? Has the bank already informed you that the bank will be relying on the audited financial statement? So is the auditor liable to the known third parties? Yes. Please, anyone who have no idea about auditor liability, you still have time before exam, 4 weeks. You should go and read the Examiner article on auditor liability. Okay, then in the last paragraph, do you believe in the last paragraph we have an advocacy problem? Mick has asked whether a representative of the firm can attend a meeting with Mick with a bank. So do you believe this gives rise to an advocacy threat, everyone? So attending a meeting with a bank, attending a meeting with bank. So do you believe attending a meeting with bank and accompanying Mick give rise to a advocacy threat? Give rise to an advocacy threat? Why? Justify. Give rise to an advocacy threat because the audit firm, by attending the meeting, the audit firm by attending the meeting with client, by attending the meeting with client and the bank will, by attending the meeting with bank will be promoting the client business interest. Will you be promoting the client business interest? Uh, if you attend the meeting, will that increase the prospects that the bank will offer the loan to emu gyms? Do you believe your presence in the meeting will boost the chances that emu gyms will get the loan, because the bank will be confident that the auditor is sitting with Mick? That means the Mick financial statement is good. So are you promoting the client's position? So promoting the client position, is it an advocacy threat? So give rise to an advocacy threat because, which the student miss in the exam paper. You will never get marks without because, right? So give rise to an advocacy threat. So have we identified the matters? Right. So we know the advocacy is to be politely declined. Advocacy is to be politely declined. That is a safeguard. We cannot attend a meeting with bank, right, on behalf of the client. So advocacy is to be politely declined if you want to write a safeguard. For the self-review threat above, you can have two different teams, right? It's not a listed company, so you can have two different teams for payroll and for the audit. Had it been a listed company, yesterday, I hope you remember the day 3, and in the day 3, we refused the payroll because it was a listed company, right? The safeguard has been written just for the sake of the knowledge, right? But if you look at the list, when a question asks for matters, You need to write safeguards, right? Because the checklist I have given you above contains ethical issues and safeguards. So you need to write safeguards with every ethical issue. Have you taken more than 2 marks? If we give 2 marks per heading, the first heading will give me 2 marks, right? The second heading will give me 2 marks. But we know the second heading, sorry, will give me 2 marks. The third heading will give me 2 marks. The, the fourth heading will give me 2 marks. Reliance will give me 2 marks. Attending a meeting with the bank will give me 2 marks. How many marks I need to gain? Just 8? But I hope you got a way of reading the case study. Right? And there can be many more problems which you can identify, right? This is just a checklist within the constraint of the webinar, right? But I hope within the constraint of the webinar, at least I read the case with you and I found the points while discussing that with you, right? But you can identify more points on the basis of your knowledge. But I hope you got the sense of writing the answer or getting the answer on a question which asks for evaluate the matters to be considered in accepting engagements to Emugem company, right? Okay, now tell me, are you a clever student or a weak student? If you are a clever student, we are missing a very important point. Let's go back to the introductory page. If you go to the introductory page, and for a purpose, I ask you to read the introductory page before coming to exhibit number 4. Now tell me on the introductory page, are we the auditor of the Red Pack Sports Company? And do you believe the Red Pack Sports Company is also offering the gym services and the gym facilities? And we have been approached by Emu Gyms. So do you believe Emu Gyms and Red Pack Sports Company have a conflict of interest? So is that an important point even? We are already performing audit of Red Pack, right? And Red Pack also offers the gym services. So do you believe there is both are competitors to one another? So from the introductory page, you will also identify that the Red Pack company, which is already your audit client, and the Emu Gyms company, which you are about to accept, are competitors. And because they're competitors, you will justify they have a conflict of interest. So can we do audit of competitors? Can we do audit of competitors? We can, right? So code of conduct says, yes, you can. You need to apply safeguards. You need to apply safeguards to proceed. You need to apply safeguard to proceed with auditing both companies. Auditing both companies. And yes, because you're already doing audit of Red Pack as a gym company, so will you have plenty of competence? Do you have competence to audit Emu Gyms? You have, because you're already doing audit of the Red Pack company. So competence will be favorable, right? But do you believe if you read the case properly from the start to the end in the exam hall, will you realize that Red Pack is also offering the same business which Emu Gyms is offering? So do you all realize Emu Gyms and Red Packs are competitors to one another, right? So this is an additional point for another 2 marks. So I hope you got some sense, everyone. Right, we're taking a break now, and after the break, we'll go with more papers. We have 2 more papers left, and both papers will give you knowledge. But already I've done a paper on accepting a new client, so I will be spending less time on another paper accepting a new client, and I will be putting more time on accepting more services from an existing client. We have 2 more papers after the break, June 18 and September 18, which will increase your knowledge on the same subject matter. I hope you like the session so far. I hope this was a productive session in terms of learning something new, which I've not covered in my previous webinar. And I'm just covering this for the sake that it has become an important topic in the recent past paper. So I hope you will read the article, which I recommended you. And I hope you will revise the list of the matters. And I hope this question, December 18, must have helped you developing a mindset of the matters to consider, right? So I hope you liked this session, because this was the first time in my many webinars with ACCA that I have covered this topic. Right. So off to a break. We'll be resuming back at 10:05, and from 10:05 onwards, we will be focusing on two more past papers. So please do join me at 10:05, and we'll start focusing on two more past papers. Right. Okay. Off to a break. Please keep putting your feedbacks during the break, so I can just evaluate the feedback. Break till 10:05 p.m. So enjoy the break and come back after the break. We have more to discuss. Okay, I'm just muting myself and I'll resume back at 10:05. And I will be looking forward to your feedback on the day 4 so far, and we'll be looking forward to your feedback of the overall 4 days so far. Thank you. Okay, welcome back everyone after the break. Just a confirmation before I start on with the session. I hope all of you can hear me. Okay, thank you very much, right? And I hope you are all in for the start of the second session, second part of the day for today. And we were focusing on practice management. Now, we did one question, which was the December 18 paper, and we still need to do another two questions so that you gain confidence on this topic, practice management. Okay, let's start on with the journey. And let's start on with the other questions. Okay, if you scroll down, and we start with the other two questions we have in the session today, which you can see in front of your screen now, the June 18 and the September 18, right? Now, if you first go with the June 18 question, which is a bit lengthy question, and I can just put the requirements of the June 18 paper in front of you. I hope all of you can see the June 18 paper in front of your screen now. Okay, that's great. So if you look at the June 18 paper in front of your screen and you scroll down this paper till the time you reach the question number 2. Okay, I hope you all can see the question number 2 on your screen now. Okay, now when you look at the question number 2 on your screen and you scroll down the question number 2 and you look at the requirements. Okay, just carefully read the requirements in 1 minute and tell me you have read the requirements very well. Just read the requirements in front of your screen for the question number 2A in orange. You have 1 minute, right? Okay, I hope you all have read the requirement. Let's start to analyze the requirements. We have total 16 marks for this requirement, right? So let's take this requirement to the Word file and let's see how we can obtain the 16 marks. Okay, June 18, right? Question number 2A. Okay, now we have two parts to this requirement, and in total it's worth 16 marks, right? So total marks you have for both is 16 marks. Now see how to go about it. Be very watchful. Okay, the question says, in relation to Pointer and Company, potential acceptance of Setter Company as a client of the firm, So is it a new client? In relation to the Pointer and Company, who is Pointer and Company? The audit firm or the client? In relation to the Pointer and Company, potential acceptance of what? Potential acceptance of Setter, right? So Setter Company is your potential client of the firm. So you are accepting a new client and the name of the client is Setter Company. Now let's see what is the question asking for in terms of your potential acceptance of Setter Company. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, so Setter is a client, Pointer is the audit firm, right? Explain the ethical issues and other matters. Explain the ethical issues and other matters that should be considered when you are accepting the new client. So is that a normal requirement which we just solved prior to the break? Explain the ethical issues and other matters which should be considered in accepting a new audit client. Is everyone clear on that? How many marks will we get for every matter we write in the part 1? 2, right? So the first requirement tells us you need to identify the ethical issues and you need to identify the other matters from the case study which you will consider in deciding whether to offer service, whether to accept the new audit client or not, right? In the second part, the examiner asks you, explain the importance of obtaining the customer due diligence. Explain the importance of obtaining the customer due diligence. And then the examiner said, and. I hope you can all see the and. There is one and here, and there was one and here. And recommend the information that should be obtained. Recommend the information that should be obtained. Now, we have in total 16 marks, and we have to break the 16 marks into 3 things. Now, when you carefully analyze the requirement, see what are you concluding with. When you analyze the requirement, see what is the breakdown of the requirement. Number 1, you need to focus on the ethical and other matters in deciding whether to accept the new client. In deciding whether to accept a new client. And each matter will give you 2 marks. Okay, second thing you have to do in this requirement is you have to tell me the importance. You have to tell me the importance of obtaining customer due diligence. And then you have to tell me information which should be obtained about the new customer. Information which should be obtained. Information which should be obtained for setup. What information will you obtain for setup when you are accepting this new client? Now, for every importance you tell me, you will get 1 mark. 1 mark per importance. And for every information you tell me which you should obtain for setter, you will get 1 mark per information. And for every matter you tell me, you will be getting 2 marks, which was the marking scheme you got prior to the break. So I hope all of you can solve the part number 1 right. When you read the case, you will find the matters which will help you in deciding whether to accept a new client or not. Have you just solved a question similar to that prior to the break, everyone? Okay, but what about the requirement number 2 and 3? Have we done a requirement like such prior to the break? Importance of customer due diligence and information which should be obtained for setter. So should we focus on 2 and 3 more in this part? So you learn something new, right? Okay. Now you have 16 marks, right? And the examiner is not saying marks are equally split between each part, right? Is the examiner saying marks are equally split between each part 1 and 2? Is the examiner telling something like that? No. So if the examiner is not telling marks are equally split, so it's totally up to you, right? You can write something more and something less. But can you skip something from 1 to 3? You can write something less, right? Or you can write something more till the time you make 16 marks. But should you write all 3 of them, more or less, to make up the 16 marks answer? But can you skip something? But please be very watchful. Examiner is not telling us the marks are equally split, right? So the marks are not equally split, so we are open. We have 16 marks and we have to do 1 to 3. Now I spend more marks on 1 and less on 2 and 3, or I spend equal marks on 1 and then 2 and 3. That's totally up to you, right? So you need to take your judgment, right? How will you exercise the number of marks? I've given you the breakdown of the marking scheme. Okay, now tell me first, what is the customer due diligence? Okay, customer due diligence. What does that mean? What is the literal meaning of the word customer due diligence? What is the meaning? What is it? What does it means? Okay, very good answers. Screening. Customer due diligence means the client screening, that you have to do the client screening. So is equal to client screening. Is it a new client? Is it a new client? Setter, right? Setter is a new client. Now, isn't a very simple knowledge question the examiner is asking you, that what is the importance of customer due diligence? So now tell me, what is the importance of the customer due diligence? For every point you explain, you get 1 mark. What is the importance? What is the benefit? What is the benefit of a customer due diligence prior to accepting a new client? What benefit does you get out of it? Do you get benefit about, do you gain knowledge of business? Knowledge about business? Do you get to know more about your potential client? Do you get to know more about your potential client? Okay. Do you get to know the importance of the customer due diligence is that you get to know about risky areas. You get to know about issues. You get to know about problems relating to the potential new client. So will you gain knowledge about your new client? Will you gain knowledge about its policies, systems? So gain knowledge about business, right? Sorry, you gain knowledge about business. You get to know more about your potential client, its systems, its management, its policies, etc. And you also get to know more about the risky areas, the issues, the problems. Yes, you also get to know about the regulatory environment. You get to know about the regulatory environment. You get to know about the laws and regulations. So do you believe client screening is something beneficial? Does client screening give you some benefits? So every benefit you explain in a paragraph form, in like 2 sentences max, is equal to 1 mark, right? It can give you the benefit of identifying whether the client is involved in money laundering or not. So that's even a benefit. So I hope you're clear with the point number 2, importance of obtaining the customer due diligence. So is everyone clear with the jargon, customer due diligence? That is as simple as that, known as client screening, right? Okay, now come to the third point. Examiner is asking us information which you should obtain as the audit firm, which you should obtain about SETA. What information will you obtain about SETA when you are conducting the client screening? And every information you tell me should have a purpose, to score 1 mark. If you tell me an information without a purpose, that is half a mark. But if you tell me an information which should have a purpose, it will give me 1 mark. Every information should have a purpose is equal to 1 mark. So what information you should obtain about SETA when you are conducting the client screening? Do you believe when you're conducting the client screening, you obtain a lot of information about the company, a lot of information about your potential client? For example, you obtain information about its prior year financial statements, which help you gauge, which help you judge or analyze the past trends, or which help you to analyze the past trends or ratios. So is that an information you will be obtaining about SETA, the prior year financial statements, to know the trends in their financial numbers when you are conducting the client screening? Will you be obtaining information about like the certificate of incorporation of the company your new client certificate of incorporation. To ensure what? What is the purpose of taking a certificate of incorporation about your new client? Certificate of incorporation to ensure that the business is legal. The business is legal and is registered. It is a registered business. It is a legal business, right? So you can obtain the certificate of incorporation. You can take the passports. You can take the passports. You can take the ID cards. You can take the traveling documents of the owners, so that you know that none of the owner is involved in any wrongdoing. None of the owner is involved in any sort of a window of a money laundering transaction. You want to see their traveling records. Which countries do they normally travel? Because some of the countries are considered to be a safe haven for money laundering. Some of the countries are considered to be safe haven for tax evasions. So you want to see the owners of the company. You want to see the passports. You want to see the ID cards. You want to see the traveling documents of the owners to confirm uh, any involvement any involvement in wrongdoings like money laundering or something like that, like money laundering. Okay, do you want to know, do you want to get the information about their tech certificates? That's good. Good answer from a student. You want to get information about their tech certificates to confirm any related party transactions, because the tax certificates do tell you about the related party transactions in some countries. Tax certificates to confirm any related party transactions, or whether tax is paid on a timely basis or not, and so on and so forth. So you can have so much information, right, about your potential client. But when you write an information in exam paper, should you write the reason of that information? Are you taking the information with a purpose, or you're just taking an information which is useless? Do you believe every information the auditor take has a definite purpose, or is it a useless information? So should you take useful informations which help you in the screening process, or do you just take useless informations? Right? So this is just example, right? So information which you should obtain. See how I wrote my answer. Prior year financial statement, that was an information. Certificate was an information. Passports was an information. Tax certificate was an information. So I was writing the information, and after the information, I was writing the purpose. So you need to write the informations, right? When you read the case, in this case, when you read the June 18 case, the case might help you with more information you should obtain. So when you read the case, obviously the case will also be helping you with more information. So you can write information identified out of the case study, which will become more important, right? But the 1, 2, 3, 4 I wrote with you is like a journal list of information, which should be connected with the case study, right? And I think 1, 2, 3, 4 is all connected with the case study when you read the case. So will you be reading the June 18 paper and identifying how things will be? So will you be able to go with this question? What was unusual in this June 18 paper? The requirement number 1 was the carry forward requirement from what we did in the December 18 paper, the matters in deciding whether to accept. The requirement number 2 was a very knowledge requirement asking you the importance. And the requirement number 3 was a very journal requirement asking you the information. So if you read the requirement carefully, if you plan the requirement carefully, just I did with you, will you miss anything? But if you just read the requirement in a hurry and you overlook comma, what will happen? Will you be answering 1 to 3 then? If you read the requirement in a hurry, you might not be answering the 1, 2, 3. Either you might be answering 1 and 2 or just 1. So is it important to read the requirement carefully before you plan your answer? And particularly when the requirement is lengthy, particularly when the requirement has a lot of and particularly when the requirement has a lot of commas, right? So will you continue with this paper yourself, June 18? Please do read the scenario of the June 18 paper right here at home. And when you read this scenario, identify the ethical and other matters which you might consider in deciding whether to accept audit of setter or not. And might be when you're reading this case, the case might help you with certain informations which you should be extracting during the client due diligence process, right? So it's not a difficult case, just 3 paragraphs in the case, and a very easy looking case, just like a December 18 paper. So you will find ease of finding the matters. Okay, now let's move on to another question. The other question you should be focusing on, because we are focused on accepting a new client. Now let's do a question which is about accepting an additional service from an existing client, right? So let's change the topic. Accepting additional services from an existing audit client. Agree? Should we start with this, the second topic? Accepting additional services from an existing audit client, and we have one paper here which is September 18. So we'll solve the September 18 paper so you gain knowledge and you know the marking scheme, right? This time, when you focus on the matters for accepting the new matters here, you will get 1 mark per matter because it's services from an existing client. But when you are accepting a new client, I hope you remember the marking scheme, right? The marking scheme is 2 marks. Is that clear to everyone? Okay, let's go down to the September 18 paper. Okay, all of you can see on your screen the September 18 paper. Okay, that's great. Move down the September 18 paper and you come to the question number question number 3. Okay, now we know the question number 3 mostly in your exam paper is set on other assignments. I hope you know that, right? Syllabus area F. And I've covered the syllabus area F other assignments so many times in my previous webinars. I've covered due diligence. I've covered the review of prospective financial information. I have even covered the audit of a performance information. So all these topics have gone down in my previous webinars, so you can watch them. But you know, question number 3 is mostly formulated in the exam paper on the syllabus area F, which is about other assignments, which is about non-audit services. And I hope you know which other assignments are part of your syllabus, everyone. Do you know the other assignments part of your syllabus, particularly review of prospective financial information, particularly the due diligence review, and particularly the forensic audit? Are these 3 very important services you have in your syllabus, right? And I have already done webinar on each one of them previously. Okay, now look at the question number 3 and go down and look at the requirement. Can you just read this requirement I highlighted in orange? This first one. Just give me 1 minute. Can you just read this requirement number 1 for 6 marks? In orange. Are we accepting an audit service here, or are we accepting a service which is known as prospective financial information? So are we accepting a new client here, or are we accepting a service here? So are we accepting a PFI service here? Wonderful. Or are we accepting a new audit client here? How many marks we have? 6. So for 6 marks, how many matters I should write? 1 divided by 1, right? I should be writing 6. It is accepting a service from an existing client. Go to the first paragraph. Go to the first paragraph. Just read this from here. See, is it your existing client? Just read this much and tell me, is it your existing client? In 1 minute, read the para in orange and confirm, is it your existing audit client? Right. So is everyone confirmed that Nale company is our audit client, is our existing audit client? And is the management of Nale company asking us to perform another service, which is the prospective financial information, right? So if you go back and we look at this case here, let me bring the question from here. The question was 6 marks. And when you look at this question for 6 marks, you will realize this is an existing client, right? The question tells you, when you read the case tells you that Nale company is an audit client of the firm. So the moment you read this is an audit client of your firm, so this audit client, your existing audit client, is asking you to perform additional service. Which additional service? Prospective financial information. Prospective financial information. Now, my topic today is not to teach you prospective financial information, right? My topic is to teach you matters which should be considered. So am I teaching you what is prospective financial information, or am I teaching you matters which should be considered by Jensen and company before accepting? What's my focus? So is it a PFI topic? No, it is a practice management topic. Matters which should be considered by Jensen before accepting the engagement to review and report on this. Now, when you read the case, what you should have in mind? Tell me. When you're reading the case as a student, when reading case, what you should have in mind? Should you have in mind the checklist you studied at the beginning of the class? Should you know the checklist of existing client? And if you know the checklist of an existing client, can you apply it to the case study? Can you adapt it to the case study? Right? So what's the checklist? Now, when I am accepting the review of the prospective financial information, will I be concerned about, number one, will I be concerned about my competence versus the nature of service as an audit firm versus the nature of service? And the nature of service is PFI, prospective financial information. I'll just be reading the case study, right? I'll just be reading the case study, but I'm just trying to formulate my journal list here. So will the audit firm be concerned about the competence versus the nature of service? Do we know the nature of service, PFI? And do you all believe PFI is a very subjective engagement, because it looks into future? It looks into future, which is very risky, which is very uncertain. So is it like a simple service, or is it like a very complex service? Because you're looking into future, right? You are working on the assumptions of the management, right? So competence. Okay, second thing I would be looking for is the deadlines. Are there any deadlines? Are there any deadlines? Given by the management. Given by the management. Okay, I will be looking at some ethical issues because it's my existing client. So being my existing client, I will be looking forward to some of the ethical issues. Existing client, I will be looking for some ethical issues from the case. If there are any ethical issues, I will be looking forward to the safeguards. I will be considering my fees versus complex services. Fees versus, is it a complex service? Fees versus complex service. Okay. Okay, now this completes the list, right? Now tell me, can there be something case specific? Can there be something case specific not given in point 125? Point 125 has come from where? Point 125 has come from your knowledge. But can there be something extra in the case which can help you with the 6th point, 7th point, 8th point? So you should have one knowledge. Look at the point number 125. It was just knowledge. But can there be something extra in the case when you read the case? Now, learn one thing. Whenever you're offering a service to a client, whenever you are offering any specific service to client, like what are specific services? In the last question, we were doing the payroll services. That was not a specific service. Specific services are the one which comes in your syllabus area F. Whenever you're offering any service to the client, like the specific service, like the one covered in the syllabus area F, not like the payroll service, right? Not like the review of internal controls, the specific services which are part of your syllabus. So whenever you're offering any specific service to client, like the one in the syllabus area F, example, due diligence review, example, due diligence. So if a question comes on due diligence, if a question comes on forensic, which has already come, or if a question comes on review of prospective financial information, any three of them, right? Prospective financial information. Now, whenever you're offering any specific service to client, like the one covered in the syllabus area F, example due diligence, example forensic, or review of prospective financial information. Now, which one we have in September 18? In September 18, we have review of prospective financial information, right? So when you're offering us any specific service to client, the three, only the three, right? Will you remember the three for exam paper? This is not for any other service, right? This is for the service which is part of your syllabus area F. Is everyone getting understanding of that? Is everyone getting my point? Right? So any services, right? I'm giving you three examples, right? Any services which is in your syllabus area F. So when you're offering any specific service, like the one in your syllabus area F, what should you do? You should consider a matter relating to the assurance level. So when you're accepting a service, the three service, which is in your syllabus area F, from an existing client, you should also consider a matter which relates with the assurance level, because there can be misunderstanding. You should agree the assurance level with the management when you're offering them an service which is in the syllabus area F. Do you believe that the audit firm should discuss a matter relating to the assurance level? Should they get a clarity on the assurance level, clarity on assurance level from the management, clarity on assurance level to avoid any misunderstandings? Can there be a misunderstanding that the management believes a review of a prospective financial information is a reasonable assurance, just like audit? Can there be a misunderstanding? So is it better that you inform the client when you're accepting it that this is not a reasonable assurance, it is only a moderate assurance? I hope you know the PFI is a moderate assurance, right? So should you consider matters relating to the assurance level when you're accepting a service? Should you provide clarity to the management on the assurance level to avoid any misunderstandings? Will that be an important matter when you're accepting a service? So should you tell Narle company that this is a moderate assurance engagement so that there is no misunderstandings later? Is that clear to everyone? So when you are writing the matters in exam paper pertaining to due diligence or pertaining to forensic or pertaining to prospective financial information, can you just write a matter pertaining to the assurance level? So there is a clarity. Is everyone clear on this? Do you believe there is a need for clarity? Can there be misunderstandings between you and the management later? Audit is default, right? Audit is default, reasonable. But these services are not as regular as audit, because these services are not as regular as audit. So the management might have a different mindset. The management might believe this is also a reasonable assurance. So should you clarify the management, the assurance level, right? Should you also think about another matter, which should be your scope? Should you provide a clarity on scope when you're accepting a service like the three above? Should you tell management the clarity on scope that this is a review only, not an audit? So should you tell management of the Narle company that this is a review engagement, not an audit? So the scope of the review engagement is limited. What if the management of the Narle company is confused? They believe that the review of a prospective financial information has an equal scope to that of an audit. Are you getting my point? Should you need to provide clarity on scope when you're offering a prospective financial information? Can there be any confusion on the scope of a prospective financial information? Can the management misunderstood this? Exactly, Sunair. This will be covered later in the engagement letter. But before you cover them in the engagement letter, should you consider them before accepting the client? Should you agree with them before accepting the client? And later you formalize them in the engagement letter. Even the fees, right? Fees is a component of an engagement letter. But why are we considering fees before accepting? So a lot of matters are considered before accepting, which are then formalized in the engagement letter later. Is that clear to everyone? So when you are accepting an engagement, so you clarify a lot of matters, and those matters later gets to an engagement letter. So do you believe you should be discussing matters relating to assurance level? Should you be discussing matters relating to the scope when you're offering, right? Should you be also, very good point, right? Should you be discussing points relating to the intended users? Should you ask management who are intended users of PFI? Because for audit, this is a very illogical question. Suppose you're doing audit of a company. Will you ask management who are intended users? The management will think this is a very illogical auditor. He's asking me who are the users of the audit of financial statement. But do you believe when you're offering a service, should you ask management who are intended users of the service? Will that be a relevant matter in this context? Should we seek clarity of who are intended users of the prospective financial information, who will be using them, right? So these are additional matters, right? These are additional matters you can think about when you're offering services like the three in your syllabus. Additional matters. So please do read the case. We have exactly, we can consider the duration of PFI as well, right? That is also a very valid matter. You can ask management what's the duration of PFI, how long the PFI is. Is it for 2 years? Is it for 3 years? So is everyone clear? So then what will you do? You will just go down and you will read the September 18 paper. Most of the information given here is about PFI, which is the financial data. You will ignore the financial data. You will just read this much information, right? And this much information will help you identify the matters which you will write for a 6 marks answer. So please ensure that back at home, you read the paragraph in orange, which is just the first two paragraphs. And the first two paragraphs will help you identify the answer for 6 marks. Because the later information you see here, the numbers are given for procedures. Is that clear to everyone? The numbers are given for writing procedures, which is the second requirement. So is everyone clear when you are accepting an additional service from an existing client, and that additional service is a syllabus area F? Will you be considering additional matters like intended users, like assurance level? Will you be considering all such things? Aisha Sheikh, this is a very typical question on PFI, right? I hope you have attempted questions for December exams. I've covered these questions in my previous webinars multiple times, and every student of AAA knows that in a PFI question, in the first part, the examiner asks for matters, and in the second part, in a PFI question, the examiner asks for procedures. And the procedures have to be performed on the prospective financial information, right? So the prospective financial information is right here, the forecast statement of profit and loss, prospective financial information. So this is a very typical question. This is not the first time you are looking for this question in September 18. It has come so many times prior to September 18 and even after September 18. So I believe, Aisha, you're giving the first exam sitting, right? That's the reason you might have raised this question. Okay, so are you getting clear on the topic which we discussed today on day 4? Matters to consider, new client, existing client. Are you getting some clarity, and will this clarity help you devise a strategy for the next 4 weeks? You still have to do the March 2020 paper, right? So please ensure that whenever you are practicing a past paper and you come across a question which is asking for matters to consider when accepting a new client, or which is asking for matters to consider when accepting a service from an existing client, will you react to it in a favorable manner? Will you have a proper way of attacking it now? Right? Just let me give you another example before I just want to move towards something very, very important in the last 30 minutes or 40 minutes. Just give me 1 minute. Just want to test you. Suppose I put another question in front of you. Just give me 1 minute for that. Suppose I put another question in front of you and test you. Okay. Can you see in front of you another question paper, which is the September-December 19 paper? Just let me show you that 1 minute. Okay, can you see in front of your screen the September-December 19 paper? Everyone? Okay, so when you come to this paper, September-December 2019 paper, and you go to the question number 3 of this paper, and you know mostly the question number 3 is set for what? Quick answers. The question number 3 mostly is set for what? Mostly. The question number 3 is mostly set for syllabus area F, other assignments, right? So when you come to this question number 3 and you look at this question number 3 in the September-December 19 paper, and you have attended the webinar day 4, look at this requirement question number 3 first. Just read it and tell me, can you think of the answer? Just read what I highlighted in orange. So is this question asking you something very similar to that of the September 18 paper? The only change is that the examiner brought forensic here instead of a prospective financial information. So what is the requirement of this question here? The examiner is asking you to evaluate the matters. And examiner is giving us 8 marks. Matters before you accept the invitation to perform investigation for Bear. When you read the case, you will get to know Bear is your existing client, and Bear, being your existing client, wants you to perform a forensic investigation service. So do you believe a forensic investigation service is something covered in the syllabus area F? So will you have almost the same answer as we wrote for September 18, everyone? Will you be thinking about the assurance level? Will you be discussing the assurance level with the management? Will you be discussing your scope for forensic? Will you be discussing the intended users who will be relying on the report of forensic? Will the report be going into the court? Because we know in forensic audit that is also a very important matter. Discussing with the management that will the report be taken as an evidence in the court for the culprits, for the identification of the culprits. So look at this. September 18, you got a question on PFI. In September 19, you got a question on forensic investigation. But is this question same? Evaluate the matters which should we consider before you accept the invitation. And just the only change in this question is the service. So when you do the past papers, you will come across questions like such for 6 marks, 8 marks, 10 marks. Will you be able to hold them now after the day 4 of the webinar? Will you be able to put a better answer to this after the day 4 webinar? But you should have knowledge of forensic. You should have knowledge of PFI. You're preparing yourself for December exams, right? You must have studied the topic PFI. You must have studied the topic forensic. And if you've studied that topic, or you will be studying that in the weeks to come, you will better solve this question in exam paper. So please also attempt the September-December 19 paper question number 3. This will be an additional question. This will be taken as an additional question, right? Okay, I hope you're clear on the first subject matter of my day 4 today, which was where we started on with the presentation. And the presentation was about practice management. Right. Now, in the last 30 minutes of the day today, I have a purpose. And that purpose is to discuss an important thing with you. And that important thing is that I hope you all have read this article, Auditing in a Specialized Industry. This is available, right? This is among the 16 articles I recommended. Did I recommend 16 articles for you to read on the day 1, everyone? Okay, and was this article part of that 16 articles, Auditing in a Specialized Industry? Did I recommend this? Right, so this article, Auditing in a Specialized Industry, I just want to explore this and just want to tell you how you should be preparing this article and in what context you can think about putting the knowledge of this article in your exam paper. This article is a very journal article, right? Auditing in a specialized industry, right? Auditing in a specialized industry. Now, this is such a natural article which can help you at so many places in the AAA paper, right? This is such an easy article and such an important article which can helpful to you when you're solving a 100 marks paper, somewhere or the other. Now, tell me honestly, when you're auditing a specialized industry, do you believe auditing a specialized industry is far more challenging, far more difficult than auditing a non-specialized industry? Now, the examiner in the article has given examples of what is a specialized industry. Go to the article and see what the examiner is telling you for a specialized industry. The examiner tells you that what is a specialized industry. The examiner is giving you some examples. This is not an exhaustive list, right? This is not an exhaustive list, but the examiner is giving you some examples. Can you read these examples? Airline, banking and insurance, agriculture, and oil extraction. So examiner is saying these are among the specialized industry. So when you're auditing a specialized industry, what should you know as a student of AAA? What if a question comes in the exam paper which asks you, explain the methods that the audit firm should consider when auditing a specialized industry? Or suppose the question is formulated on a specialized industry. You're doing the question number one, right? And the question number one is developed on an airline. And in the C part of the question, the examiner asks you, explain the specific matters to be considered when auditing the particular airline industry. So should you be mentally ready at taking on questions which ask you what extra you do in a specialized industry? So first of all, you should know what is a specialized industry, right? The very first thing as a student you should know is what is a specialized industry, number one. And once you know what is a specialized industry, you should know the specific methods to consider. Please write this question, right? Specific methods to consider in auditing a specialized industry. What extra will you do when you're auditing a specialized industry? What if the question comes in December 2020 paper for 6 marks asking you what specific matters to consider in auditing a specialized industry? For example, the examiner makes a case study in December 2020 paper on a specialized industry, and the client is from the specialized industry, and you regret that you didn't read the article. Now, this is such an easy article that specific matters to consider when auditing a specialized industry. Number one, you go to the article. Can you see this heading over here? Audit considerations. What considerations will you give? What extra considerations will you give as an auditor when you're auditing a specialized industry? The first matter to consider when you're auditing a specialized industry, number one, is competence. Agree, disagree? Do you believe when you're auditing a specialized industry, the very first thing which should strike your mind is whether you have competence, whether you have the desired level of specialism? So as an audit firm, the very first thing you need to consider is your competence, is your specialization, is your specialization, is your specialization in the industry. Then only you can be very good in auditing a specialized industry. So your competence, your specialization in the industry, or your specialism. So that would be the most important thing. So having competence as the first matter when you're auditing a specialized industry, you should have awareness about laws and regulations of a specialized industry. You should have awareness of the environment in which the specialized industry operate, environment in which the specialized industry operates. So you should have plenty of knowledge, right, about the specialized industry. Like airline is such a complex industry, right? Airline, such a complex industry. Imagine a client like Emirates. Imagine the complexity of Emirates. Imagine the size of Emirates. Imagine that when you're auditing Emirates, loads and loads and loads of information, and so difficult. So competence. Number two, come back to the article. When you're auditing a specialized industry, what else you need? Planning. Do you believe planning becomes more important in a specialized industry? Planning is important, right? Planning is important, whether you're doing audit of a small company or a large company. But do you believe it becomes more important? Do you believe your planning becomes more thorough? Your planning becomes more skeptical? Your planning becomes more attentive? So do you believe your planning will become more planning? Number two, planning. Do you believe in a specialized industry, this planning will become more thorough? This planning will become more skeptical? Do you believe this planning will become more uh, with more due care, more focused? Very good. So planning. Do you do planning of every audit? Yes. Do you do planning of a non-specialized industry? Yes. But do you believe that planning in a specialized industry will become more focused, more due care, more skeptical, more thorough because you're auditing a specialized industry? Will you spend more time on it? Will you identify more risky areas in a specialized industry? Will there be more challenges in your planning of a specialized industry? Right? Third factor, very important factor, competence planning. And when you're auditing a specialized industry, another very important matter to consider is reliance on an expert. I hope you all know the ISA 620, using the work of an expert. Using the work of an expert, that is part of your syllabus, right? Using the work of an expert. See the blue box, using the work of an expert, ISA 620. So, do you believe that when you're auditing a specialized industry, there should be a specific matter which is reliance on the work of an expert? Do you need an expert in a specialized industry in your audit team as part of your audit team? Do you need to rely? Do you need to rely on an expert when you're auditing a specialized industry? Rely on expert? Do you? And as a student, do you know the prerequisites? Do you know the prerequisites of relying on the work of an expert? Do you know that, everyone? ISO 620. Very good. Before you rely on the work of an expert, you should consider the independence of the expert, right? Before you rely on the work of an expert, you should consider his experience. You should consider the competence. So, will you just place a blind reliance on the work of an expert? Will you have a blind reliance on the work of an expert, or will you ensure that you are relying on an expert who is independent, who has experience, and who has competence? So, are these the same prerequisites you apply on the work of the internal auditor? Are these the same prerequisites you apply on the work of the internal auditor, even in the exam paper? Right? So, when you're auditing a specialized industry, what is the summary? When you're auditing a specialized industry and you're thinking about the specific matters versus a specialized industry in exam paper, and this might come in any context, in anywhere. So anywhere you faced a question and you think the question is on a specialized industry, you can just think about CPE, where C is the competence, P is the planning, and E is the expert. So will you remember the CPE as a mnemonic, as a specific matter when you're auditing a specialized industry? Right? So now tell me, suppose you get a question in exam paper which says, evaluate the matters to be considered in deciding whether to accept the whether to accept the new audit client, whether to accept the new audit client, question mark, and the marks are 10. Have we done this question in the class today, everyone? Right? Suppose you get a question in exam paper which asks you, evaluate the matters to be considered in deciding whether to accept the new audit client. And there is a clever student, right? The clever student, when he or she was reading the case, you identified that the new audit client is from a specialized industry, When you were reading the case, you realize that the new audit client is from a specialized industry, and immediately recall the checklist of accepting a new audit client covered before, plus you immediately recall the article Audit in a specialized industry because you were a clever student. So when you will write your answer, comment on the matters or evaluate the matters. Evaluate the matters. You will, because you know this client is from a specialized industry, so you will write your journal points like client screening and correspondence with the previous auditor. But will you also be giving importance to the points like competence? And will you link competence with the specialized industry so that the examiner knows you read the article? Will you use the word specialized industry in the exam paper? Will you link competence with the specialized industry so the examiner knows that as a student you come prepared with this article? Uh, will you consider using the work of an expert when you are when you are evaluating the matters to consider whether to accept the new audit client? Will you be considering at that time using the work of an expert? Using the work of an expert? So if you are attempting a question on practice management, right? And you believe that the client you are accepting, the client is from a specialized industry. The client is from a specialized industry. Will you give regards to your knowledge coming from this particular article? Will you try to link these points to your answer to make your answer more impressive, making your answer more better than a weaker student answer, everyone? So if you get to know in the exam paper that the company is a specialized industry, will you give regards to this article somewhere or the other as part of your answer? Can that give you that will that make your answer impressive? So this is not a standalone article, right? This is not a standalone article, but this is a very simple article. It will just take 30 minutes for you to read this article. And if you read this article, this might help you somewhere or the other in the exam paper. Is that clear to all of you? So please ensure that the 16 articles I recommended you're reading them. This was just one glimpse of an article because I thought this article can connect with practice management. So I thought I should spend just 10-15 minutes on this article so that you have a mindset of competence, you have a mindset of planning, you have a mindset of expert. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, is everyone clear on this article? Is everyone clear on the 3 parameters? Is that difficult? Have you understood this? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now just one last thing before I wrap up things. Uh, this webinar over the last 4 days have focused on diversified areas, and tomorrow being the last day, I need to focus on another very important area, which is reporting. And reporting is a very static topic of the question number 2 of your paper. And reporting is a topic which cannot be eliminated from the paper. It can come for less marks or more marks, but cannot be eliminated. And normally, I've covered this topic reporting so many times in my past webinars, but still, there is so much misunderstanding the student have about reporting. There is so much issues the student have about reporting. So even though I've covered it in my previous webinar, I do this topic in my every webinar. And this time I am doing it again tomorrow on the day 5. We will be looking for some interesting guidance on reporting, which will be really helpful to you. And I will be giving you some clues, some suggestions on how you can improve your answer on audit reporting tomorrow. So please ensure that you are part of the day 5 tomorrow, which is the final day of this webinar. And most of the time, the students have expectation that the tutor will give some important areas on the last day. Obviously, important areas does not match with a strategic qualification like ACCA and a strategic paper like AAA. But I normally post my important topics, likely topics, over my Facebook page or in the WhatsApp group, which I will do by the 15th of November. So if you have expectation that I'll share some important topics tomorrow, no. I've focused on topics which were important somehow or the other for December exams, and I spent time on that. But if you're looking for some very specific topics to come in December exams, which is very difficult, because I believe spotting the mind of the examiner is very difficult. But still, I do that by the mid of November. And I'll be sharing that on the WhatsApp group. So nothing to worry about. I'll be sharing the day 5 resources with you in the early morning, probably 7 to 8 hours before the start of the webinar. So you will get time to know what is the agenda of the day 5 tomorrow. And when you come to the live session, you should be better prepared, right? Please do watch my previous webinar, at least my March 2020 webinar and at least my December 19 webinar. Please watch my previous webinar, minimum three. So with this webinar and the previous 3 webinars, if you utilize them in an effective manner, that will be really, really good for you, right? So I'm just wrapping up my day 4 today because we have accomplished our agenda for today, which was practice management. I hope you had an insightful day today. You learned something today when you joined the session approximately 3 hours ago, and now 3 hours later when we're ending the session. I hope you learned something, you gained something from the session today. Has it given you some increment? Has there been some increment in the last 3 hours? Have you been able to got a clarity on the marking scheme, 1 mark and 2 marks? And I hope you got an understanding of the question, how to read the question and how to read the articles, right? So please utilize this knowledge, implement this knowledge, right? And I'll meet you back with my final day of this webinar tomorrow. And I'm just ending the webinar. I was not very well today for conducting this webinar, but obviously these webinars cannot be cancelled because these are being conducted at a very crucial time. So even though I was not well, I'm having a very severe flu and a severe cough. I did control my cough in the last 3 hours by having a lot of tea and coffee. And I think I just coughed minimum in the session, but I'm having a very severe flu. So uh, with that, even I conducted this day just to facilitate you towards your exam journey in December. So please have an effective study approach and study in an effective manner. And thank you for the well wishes you're giving to me. And I will be looking forward to the final day and looking to you in the 5th and final day tomorrow. Have a nice day, all of you, and study effectively. I'll see you back with a live webinar, day 5 tomorrow. Till then, goodbye and Allah Hafiz.